Hello, Sam here from Order Systems, and in this video I'd like to show you how we can build a basic media system in ELAN. So let's build a basic but real-world media system. It's going to comprise of 3 zones: a kitchen, a master bedroom and a cinema room. I'll be using products that are distributed by Order Systems such as Audio Control and AV Pro Edge, but the configuration is the same across any other manufacturer that you use. You always want to check the configurator to see if there's any drivers for the products you use, see if they exist in the core database, and also read any integration notes that are on the management cloud. Usually drivers in the core database require a communication device to configure an IP or serial connection. This could be to a source, a zone controller, or maybe even a display, but again, read any integration notes. Third-party drivers, from what I've seen, usually have a communication device built into them, but again, some may require a separate communication device. Most third-party drivers do have a small cost attached to them. Others are free, so make sure that you're aware of any additional costs and add that into your quote. All the drivers that I'll be using in this video are going to be available in the resource link just below the video. Just make sure that you purchase the license from the vendor's site. So I've got a blank project here, and let's go into media and add some sources in that will be used on the project. I'm going to start with a SkyQbox, who are a satellite provider in the UK. I've got the IP control driver from Intrinsic Dev in my drivers folder, so I'll go to sources, right click and add a new generic media source. In this window, click import and find the driver in my drivers folder. I'm going to name it SkyQ. And the driver asks for the IP address, so the communication method is built into this driver. That's done. All the interfaces are all built for us on this driver, so we can go through and have a look at those. Next, I'm going to add an Apple TV. So when I run my training course, we go over a couple of methods on adding an Apple TV. We use the core database IR driver and edit that stock interface. And we also import IR codes that may have been created on a previous project and use a media template to partly build the interface for us. I'm just going to use the core database driver and quickly edit it. So I'll go to sources and add a new interface IR. And find Apple TV. Once it's added into the project, I need to set the IR output, which I'll set to output 1 in this example. Now I'm going to quickly edit this interface by removing any unused buttons and making the interface look a bit more like an Apple TV remote control. I'm going to delete everything except from the play button, the menu button and the hat switch control. I'll hold down control on my keyboard and highlight all the buttons that I want to remove. Of course, you can use an IP driver for Apple TV which has pre-built interfaces, but this is part of my training course and I want to show people how you can customize interfaces. So I right click and delete. I'm going to delete the rectangular regions too. And I'm now left with the hat switch, the play and the menu button. So let's move those around. I want to make the menu button the same width and height as the play button. So I'm going to click on the menu button, which is the button I want to adjust. Hold control down and click and highlight the button that I want to match the sizing to, which is the play button. Right click, match width, match height, align the bottom, and then have a small move about to line it all up. And then I'm just going to add in an Apple TV logo. Why not? You need to make sure you copy the layout across to the different aspect ratios, making small adjustments on the interfaces as you go. You can also go and add buttons or icons to other viewers, such as the HR40, the HR30, and the HR10 as well. And that's done. We just built a basic Apple TV IR driver. Now I'm going to add in a Kaleidoscape player, which is basically a movie server, allowing us to play ultra high resolution content. This driver is developed by Alan Chow at Chowmain and can be purchased on the Chowmain Soft Marketplace. I'm going to add that in. And all the interfaces are built for us, where we can see cover art, information on what's now playing, browsing content. It's just a great driver. You just need to add an IP address and go through the purchase procedure to get this driver fully functional. But you do get a trial period with this driver as well. And that's the sources done for now. So let's now move on to some IP controlled displays. I'll have two IP controlled TVs. I'll go to displays, right click and add a new display. I'm going to choose a Samsung IP controlled TV, and that'll be for the kitchen. And IP controlled TVs require a little bit of configuration. This driver, for example, requires the TV to authorize control from a third-party system. So you'd put in the IP address, the MAC address, and authorize control. And a message will show up on the TV screen. You'll see that the IP controlled TVs automatically add a source. This allows you to control the features that are built into the TV, such as accessing smart features and controlling the TV menus. So it's good practice to rename these so you know which display it's associated with. If you are going to show these features to the viewer, you may want to name it Smart TV or Freeview, or whichever works for you. Let's add in another TV. Let's go for an LG, and I'll call that Master Bedroom TV. LG TVs require a key code to be generated by the TV and input into the driver along with the IP address and the MAC address. So once again, it's automatically created a source, so rename that to match the display that's shown in the displays list. Finally, I'm going to add a projector for the cinema room. I'm going to use the Sony projector driver from Intrinsic Dev, which you can purchase from their website. And I'm going to import it. So I'll go to displays, add new display, import and find the Sony projector driver. Bring that to the project and set it up by following the integration note. I'll then check the sources and rename any sources that it imports automatically. Now we've got our displays. Let's now add in some zone controllers. A zone controller is what controls the zone's power, volume, and source selection. A zone is an area in the project such as a kitchen, a master bedroom, a garden, a cinema, and so on. So we want to be able to distribute the sources to the zones, and to do that we'll need a video matrix. I'll be using the AV Pro Edge 4x4 HD Base T matrix. HD Base T in its simplest form is sending video and audio signals over a category cable, usually Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a or higher. This can also be transmitted along with DC power to power the receiving HD Base T device, known as POH, Ethernet pass-through, control signals such as IR, RS232 and CEC, and some can also pass through USB connectivity too. This is a free driver which you can get from AV Pro Edge's website, and it's built by Janus Technology. So I'll go to the zone controllers and add a new zone controller and import. I'll find the AV Pro Edge 4x4 HD Base T IP driver. There's also an RS232 driver as well. Now, when I expand the driver, we have the source inputs and the zone outputs, along with audio breakout, which I'm not going to go into in this video. but all we do is follow the physical cable route. So I have a skybox, HDMI out into input 1 of the AV Pro matrix. So let's logically make this connection. I'm going to go to source 1 and in the drop down choose Sky Q. I can then add an icon which will show on the viewer when we're finished. Which reminds me, media isn't going to show up in the viewer until a zone controller has been added into the project, so just be aware of that. Done. Now I'll go to source 2 and add in the Apple TV source and again choose an icon. Apple TV is HDMI out and physically going into input 2 on the AV Pro matrix. I'm not going to bind the kaleidoscope here as I want to use that for the cinema, so let's go down to the zone outputs. Output 1 of the AV Pro matrix and name this kitchen. This is where we set the display associated with the output of the video matrix, so the kitchen TV is physically connected to output 1 of the matrix. In the display drop down, I choose kitchen TV, which then populates the source configuration window below. We have the source, whether we want to have it enabled on the interface, then we choose whether the display turns off or turns on or doesn't change its state when the source is selected. So if you had music playing in this zone, for instance, you might want the display to turn off when any audio only source is selected. I have the TV turn on when either source is selected. Then we have the input the TV needs to be switched to. So the matrix has one cable going into the TV, and that might be on HDMI 1, as the source switching is being handled by the matrix. So I'll select HDMI 1 on both sources. Now we have this last column, the volume control. Natively, any zone controller you add will want to control the volume of a zone. That's why it says this zone. But video matrices, well, none that I've worked on, have speaker outputs. So we have to tell the zone controller what device will control the volume for that zone. Now in the kitchen, there is a device that can control the audio volume. I'll give you a few seconds to answer and see if you get that right. The answer is the kitchen television. We need to tell the zone controller that the volume of the kitchen zone is being controlled by the television for both sources. And that's done. And I'll do the exact same thing for the master bedroom on output 2, but I'll just speed this up. When you add a zone controller to a project, all of the zones will automatically present themselves on the viewer whether you're using them or not. So then it's our job to tidy up and remove any unused zones, which we will do shortly. But I like to put an identifier on unused zones so I know to hide them later. There is no wrong way to do this. I tend to use a dot or a period before the zone name. This is what I do, as it's how you hide folders and documents on a Linux machine. You can also put the word hide after the zone. It's completely up to you. Whatever works best for you when you come back to site in a year's time, you know why that identifier is there. On the video matrix, I'll go to zone 3 and 4 and the audio breakout zones and put a dot before the zone names. So let's now set up a cinema room, standalone. I'm going to import an AVR, the Audio Control Concert AVR driver, and rename it to be Cinema. And the configuration is pretty much the same as the matrix. We expand the driver to see the sources, and I'm going to assign the kaleidoscope player to the AV input. And then I'm going to choose a logo. On the outputs, I'll go to zone 1, rename it to be Cinema, choose the display associated with this zone, and I'll set up the source configuration. Now, an AVR usually has speaker level output terminals on it, or it might be an AV processor with line level outputs and uses a separate power amp, but the setup is the same. AV receivers are capable of controlling volume to the speakers, so therefore the zone volume can be left as this zone. When we choose the cinema zone on the viewer, the zone controller, the audio control AVR, will turn the zone on, and the TV, select the source, and allow the user to adjust the volume level of the AVR. Simple. Right, before we add the cinema to the matrix, let's have a little tidy up. Zone 2 on the AVR, I'm going to put a dot in front of the zone name, so I know to hide that zone. If I go ahead and open the viewer and go to media, you'll see what I meant earlier. When you add a zone controller, zones are automatically added to the viewer, and it's our job to remove the unused zones. Back in the configurator, I go to the interface tab and find my viewer interface. Expand it and go to the page layouts and find media, and remove the unused zones. And because I've put the identifier before the zones, it's much easier for me to remove them. You want to copy the layout and paste it to the other viewers. It saves you having to do it manually every time, whatever works for you. So now head back to the viewer, go to media, and we now have a nice clean list of zones. Click into the kitchen and we see we have Sky and Apple TV. Head to the cinema and we have the Kaleidoscope player. So if you're still with me this far in, thank you very much. Feel free to comment the word "made it." Now let's incorporate the cinema in with the rest of the system. And now we have to be careful here, as we could create a programming loop. A programming loop in media can be caused when a single display is set as the display in 2 or more zones. The physical connection signal path would normally be source, matrix, AVR, display. So we just want to copy that. We're going to set output 3 of the AV Pro matrix to be connected to an input on the AVR. So back in media, zone controllers, we don't actually need to do anything with the AV Pro matrix. If we were to set the display to also be the projector in zone 3 of the matrix, we would have created a loop, as the display is also assigned to the zone of the AVR. I'm going to call zone 3 on the AV Pro matrix connection to cinema AVR with the identifier in front of it. We go straight to the AVR now and show the inputs. And I'm going to set SAT input here to be the input connection from the AV Pro Matrix Zone 3 output. Again, think physically. A cable from output 3 of the video matrix is going into the SAT input on the AVR. Now we can go to the AVR zone output. And we can now see that we have Sky and Apple TV as available sources in the cinema. There is one setting I like to set here, and that is the aux zone. This can tell the zone controller that there is another device controlling the source switching. So in the drop down, I'll select the AV Pro Matrix. In the source configuration, we now have a new column, which we can set to match the source inputs on the matrix. So set Sky to Sky and Apple TV to Apple TV. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the configuration. Let's now head to the viewer. We now have 3 zones. I'm going to click in the kitchen, select Sky, and we get the interface. Go back to bedroom, select Apple TV, and we get our lovely customized interface. We go to the cinema and we now have 3 sources. I'll now select Kaleidoscope and we get the pre-built interface. Splendid. And now for a little bonus, saving the best until last. We can check our configuration by using some virtualization. So let's take the cinema for example. Back in the configurator, if I go to displays and go to the projector, if I right click, I can show a virtual display. And on the right side of configurator, we can see the projector power and the inputs. I'll now go to zone controllers, go to the AV Pro Matrix and show the zones. I'll go to zone 3. Right click and show virtual zone, and then finally the AVR, go to the zone output, right click and show virtual zone. We have all the power and inputs on the right hand side of the screen for the AVR. I'm going to go and turn off the cinema now from the viewer. I'll now go to the zone and select Sky, and what you'll see is the projector turn on, the matrix switch to the Sky source, and the AVR switch to the correct HDMI input. 3, 2, 1. There we go, our work is complete. I'll now select Apple TV and you'll see the matrix switch to input 2. The AVR and the projector will stay on the same inputs. But now if I select Kaleidoscape, the AVR switches to a different input and the matrix doesn't switch as the Kaleidoscape is not connected to the video matrix. Now we turn the room off, the projector goes off, as does the AVR, and video matrices don't usually turn off, so we won't see a status change there. And that is the basic setup of 3 zones of media. I hope this video is of some help to you, and if you're interested in attending our certification training, please email us at sales@aldussystems.co.uk.